thank you all for this invitation, and thank all the audience for being here. I think you also should be grateful to Italy, because Italy always provides interesting news. That's why the room is packed. Now, starting from what was already mentioned, this is a book I co-edited in 2013. It was titled Terremoto, Elettorale, Electoral Earthquake. Now, my first slide is precisely about the idea that, well, the title was 2013. So what are we going to do for 2018? I don't know, because we have to move to larger metaphors than the earthquake. So now, first of all, just 10 seconds of self-advertising. We are currently conducting, this is also for framing my presentation, because what I will try to do is to frame the Italian result in a context where we are seeing something more broadly across Europe. That is to say, a change in electoral context which provides new opportunities for political entrepreneurs. And as soon as some of these political entrepreneurs start to exploit these issue-specific opportunities in a post-ideological context, that's what you get. And by the way, this is advertising for a free product. This is a free ebook that it's available on the research center, on our research center, on our website, the CISE. And we conducted surveys in other countries that had elections last year precisely to gauge issue opportunities and how they were exploited in Twitter communication by political parties. Now, let's move to Italy. First of all, surprise, we had a web survey 3 weeks before the election that shows precisely the outcome that we have found in the real election. Now, these were other outcomes. You see this, we have more Europe at 34%, the PD at 33%. This is basically my students. They did an internal poll before the election. I didn't ask for that. They say, oh, professor, we have spontaneously done a poll. Oh, nice, what are the results? We got the PD at 33. We got the plus more Europe at 34. Well, okay, you're not representative. But this is serious, because I was not really very much surprised by the actual result. And I think that unfortunately, by looking at the social networks, on the comments of all my colleagues and friends on social networks, it looks like we got a very different picture that claims us, in a way, as a bit out of touch with Italian public opinion. But in a way, I would say that I expected these results. Very quickly, what is unique in this result? This is the largest success of anti-establishment or radical right-wing parties ever in Western Europe, because we have, if we pull together Faster Movement, the League, Fratelli Italia, we go above 50%. From my point of view, I see a visible impact of party strategy. Matteo Salvini has successfully transformed what used to be the small Northern League, a local North Italian party based on racism towards Southern Italy, into a nationwide radical right-wing party. I'm going to show you some figures for the south of Italy. Second point, Renzi's strategy, race to the center, neoliberal from many points of view, internally divisive. Renzi fought as much as possible to divide the internal left, to refuse any agreement with the more radical left, to claim that it was something different from the traditional left, and that's what you get. The worst disaster of the Italian left ever. The defeat of Pierluigi Bersani in 2013, Bersani had to resign because he shrank the left to 25.4. Now, the PD has shrunk to 18.7. And Renzi hasn't resigned. If you read the newspapers correctly, you have understood that he's not resigned. You say, I resigned, but I'm going to manage the whole negotiations for the government. This is not resign. Now, finally, Five-Star Movement. The Five-Star Movement is precisely an example of what I'm theorizing in recent years. That is to say, we live in a post-ideological environment where citizens are perfectly happy to buy post-ideological packages that combine issues from the left and issues from the right. If you think about Marine Le Pen, who is selling a social right, that is to say, social protection and welfare coupled with hostility to immigrants. This is just an example. And what the Five-Star Movement has done is to combine, to mix and match credibility on single issues, of course in a context of distrust towards mainstream parties, And by the way, the Five Star Movement is unique because it was already in 2013 the biggest successful debutant in the story of Western Europe, debuting at 25.6, and is the only one that improved in the second election. Usually these flash parties go immediately back in a way. Well, the Five Star Movement actually improved. Now, as we will see from some data that I'm going to present, the context of opportunities emerging for this party is a context of, despite the narrative of the government, of both Renzi and Gentiloni, the prime minister, of widespread individual level economic uncertainty, very high unemployment, especially in the South, and I would say cultural fears. These echoes of some theories that I will cite later. Now, some figures. The result has to be taken seriously because it's not due to low turnout or asymmetric mobilization. In fact, the turnout decline slowed down to the physiological level of generational replacement. In some provinces in the South, turnout was even higher than in 2013. These people actually mobilized to voice their discontent. Finally, Italy is still a relatively high turnout. Of large European countries, it's only below Germany of a few points and still ahead of Britain, France, Spain, large European democracies. So turnout, it's really high. This is a significant election, a significant result. First point, Northern League. Northern League effectively became a nationwide radical right-wing party. You see that the second shade of green, that is to say in the 17 to 26%, effectively covers what used to be called the red belt. Tuscany, Marche, Umbria, even Lazio, in relatively high levels, even in southern Italy, up to 7%. This is not surprising because in a way the impact of migration and the impact of refugees was perceived even in southern Italy. These were the shores where they arrived. Many of them were resettled and distributed across provinces in southern Italy, and I'll show you later that there is a connection with voting for the League. Second point, the PD of Renzi. This sad chart, that's sad for the left, shows that this is the worst performance ever of the left. Just to give you an idea, we used to call the center of Italy the red belt because it had consistently rewarded the center-left since the age of the Communist Party, since World War II. Now, for the first time, we have get essentially a majority of single-member districts in the red belt that has gone to the center-right, some of them to the Five Star Movement. Finally, this is an international comparison. There is only one country that does worse than Italy in terms of polls to the left, broadly meant, which is France. After, of course, what happened with the Socialist Party and La République En Marche. Italy is now the country. I remember to you that Italy used to have the largest communist party in Western Europe in the 70s and 80s. Now it has become the second weakest country for polls for the left. Now, for the success and the electoral geography of the Five Star Movement. In fact, the biggest success of the Five Star Movement, the biggest improvements have been in the South. At the same time, you see that, for example, a lot of regions in Central Italy and the North still see the Five Star Movement in between 24% and 29%. So this means that, in a way, Mr. Di Maio is a bit right when he's saying that they're the only party really uniting Italy, because the Five Star Movement is much stronger in the South, with percentages that go up to, the strongest regions see the Five Star Movement above 43% and up to 63%. But at the same time, in the North, the Five Star Movement still has a relevant presence. This was for the highlights of the result. Now, I will just show you some additional data about what the potential interpretations, what some additional evidence we are providing for trying to construct a potential interpretations. First pieces of evidence. First, very quickly, there is a relationship between unemployment and voting for the Five Star Movement, even when controlling for several socioeconomic indicators. It's not only a matter of the South. That is to say that the success of the Five Star Movement might be related to economic uncertainty, broadly meant. Of course, these results are prone to ecological fallacy. We're not saying that the unemployed have voted for the Five-Star Movement, but we are saying that provinces with higher unemployment have seen higher percentages for the Five-Star Movement. So unemployment for the Five-Star Movement, migration for the League. Still controlling for socioeconomic factors, geographical zones, and other variables, we see that the percentage of resident immigrants is significantly correlated with the success of the Northern League. So in a way, you'll notice that I'm starting to build a two-dimensional scheme based on economic uncertainty and cultural uncertainty, hostility to immigrants. Now, for those of you, and I expect most of you to be familiar with Hans Peters and his colleagues' framework about winners and losers of economic transformations, of globalizations on the economic and cultural dimension. The problem here is who politicizes losers and who politicizes winners. Because if you have a politicization between winners and losers, you may have political conflict that is relevant. And what you see here is that the PD that used to be, I mean, the old PD, Pierluigi Bersani's PD in 2013, was an old-style, dusty, and rusty social democratic party. Yes, no, that's on purpose. That's a clever way to get your glances back. It works always. The old PD used to be an old rust and dusty social democratic party, but still was a party that was able to get votes across different social classes. Now, this is a survey analysis we performed on survey data just yesterday. And what we see here is that for all the parties, we don't see any class effects, except for the PD, but this is a reversed class voting, which means that effectively, by controlling for a lot of variables, the PD has effectively become the party of the elites. And this might explain why people with economic and cultural uncertainty are turning towards other parties. I'm going to skip the social demographics, which are not really relevant, except a negative association between the unemployed and the PD. And finally, we'll conclude on this. I don't think that this is an Italo-Italian story. I don't think there's a lot of Italian specificities here. What we see here is not only about these regressions that we have run, it's also about a lot of qualitative data evidence, talking to people and talking to party officials across the country. The idea here is that we have new and unprecedented patterns of unemployment, the strange unemployment in the banking systems, because these people are just outmarketed by smartphones. So you get high-profile people that get unemployed, you get job outsourcing. We also had our Whirlpool case. It's a company called Embraco, which is part of the Whirlpool group, just like the Whirlpool case in Amiens. The same story, job outsourcing matters, technological change, increasing migration, so basically challenges of processes of economic and societal transformation that are successfully politicized by new actors through cross-ideological, issue-based strategies. And mainstream parties sell an optimistic narrative of these transformations. And in a way, they are effectively becoming elite parties. Just a final comment, because I think this is due here, and this is a private enough audience to openly talk about this. I think this is implications for EU decision-making, because all this happened in a context where Italians are still largely favorable to European integration and the euro. So I would not claim these parties as anti-EU. But at the same time, what we're seeing here is a pattern that is common to other, perhaps more South European countries, where you have parties that support EU integration, but at the same time are increasingly critical of the current direction of EU policymaking. This, in a way, let's be realistic. One major problem is, in general, the low quality of Italian political personnel in many EU institutions, that throughout the years has resulted in an underrepresentation of Italy's political preferences in EU decision-making. So mostly we have to blame our own members of parliament. But at the same time, I see a problem in the relationship between EU policymaking, especially with two big questions that relate to the two fundamental conflicts of which we are seeing an impact here. First of all, handling of external borders. In a way, my final provocation is that this result is a demand for the EU taking over state functions. That is to say, these guys want more EU. They want the EU to be able to handle borders and in a way to handle the consequences of the internal market, because when job outsourcing across countries becomes massive, it's inevitable that it's going to produce this kind of consequences. Thank you.